The display updates without drawing attention to itself. Rows of vessels move along established lanes, their tracks clean and continuous. Speed bands sit where the models expect them to. Headings resolve smoothly. Identification fields populate without delay. Nothing flashes, nothing escalates, no color shifts demand attention. From the system's perspective, this is routine. The ships report on time. Their signals are complete. Their courses remain legal, conservative, and consistent with commercial efficiency. Each data point taken alone confirms compliance. Each update reinforces the assumption that nothing requires review. Yet the aggregate picture refuses to settle. A routing cluster tightens where dispersion is normal. Arrival windows compress without a corresponding port constraint. Vessels that should diverge after waypoint passage maintain proximity longer than the baseline predicts, then separate without explanation. Distances narrow, then widen, then narrow again, forming repetitions that do not violate rules but do resist expectation. No boundary is crossed, no rule is violated. The system flags none of it as error. It recalculates. Historical averages are reweighted. Seasonal adjustments are reapplied. Commercial demand curves are normalized against prior cycles. The confidence score stabilizes, briefly, then begins to drift. Not downward, sideways. The values remain within tolerance, yet they stop reinforcing each other. AIS remains present. Weather inputs are benign. Sea state does not impose constraint. Traffic density explains some, but not all, of the behavior. Fuel efficiency models fail to justify the timing. Charter optimization curves flatten where they should peak, then remain flat longer than the model allows. Individually, the vessels remain unremarkable. Collectively, they form a shape the system does not recognize. Automation continues to process the data as routine. No alert threshold is crossed. No escalation logic engages. The classification remains unchanged because nothing has happened that would justify changing it. But the correlation layer starts to hesitate. Updates arrive on schedule, yet their predictive value decays. Each refresh confirms compliance while weakening expectation. The system can still describe what the ships are doing. It can no longer explain why that pattern persists across multiple cycles. A human analyst enters the loop, not because of a warning, but because the display feels unfinished. The tracks look complete, but the picture lacks closure. The analyst does not search for wrongdoing. There is none to find. Instead, the analyst watches the repetition. Routes align, separate, then realign again. Timing synchronizes where independence is assumed. Efficiency recovers too slowly, then stalls. The sea remains open. Traffic flows. Commerce continues without interruption. Nothing demands intervention. Still, the system marks the moment, not as an incident, not as a violation, as a note. The ships are following the rules. And the rules, for the first time, stop explaining the behavior. The system does not react all at once. It begins by widening its tolerance bands, allowing for minor commercial variance. Optimization models are loosened. Assumptions about congestion, charter schedules, and fuel pricing are adjusted to absorb the irregularity. Variance is expected. Deviation is assumed to self-correct. For several cycles, this is enough. Then the convergence fails again. Predicted divergence does not occur. Vessels that should decouple after waypoint transit remain statistically linked. Their spacing fluctuates, but their timing stays aligned. Delays propagate across separate routes without a shared cause. Gains in efficiency do not materialize where pressure should force correction. Efficiency curves flatten into plateaus the model was never designed to produce. Still, no violations appear. AIS integrity holds. Reporting cadence remains stable. There is no silence, no spoofing, no degradation that would justify technical concern. The ships behave as if they are being independently optimized, yet the outcomes resemble coordination without instruction. The system attempts deeper correlation. Historical data sets are pulled forward. Comparable periods are scanned for precedent. The anomaly does not map cleanly to labor action, weather systems, port congestion, or regulatory change. External variables explain fragments, never the whole. Confidence does not collapse. It fragments. One subsystem rates the behavior as commercially plausible. Another marks it as statistically rare. A third cannot reconcile timing alignment with declared destinations. None of them are wrong. Together, they disagree. Automation hesitates, not in execution, but in interpretation. This is where escalation occurs, quietly. What was once filtered as background traffic begins to consume analytic bandwidth. Processing priority shifts without fanfare. The system does not declare risk. It reallocates attention. Routine shipping data now persists across update cycles instead of resolving and dropping away. A supervisory analyst is assigned, not to intervene, but to observe continuity. The analyst notices that expectation has become the variable under stress. The ships continue to comply. The sea remains open. Commerce proceeds uninterrupted. Yet the predictive horizon shortens. Forecasts converge later with less confidence and require more frequent correction. Escalation is not driven by worsening behavior. It is driven by the realization that normal models no longer compress uncertainty fast enough. What once resolved itself now remains present. And presence, over time, becomes relevance. Action does not arrive as movement. No vessel is contacted. No course is challenged. No authority is asserted over the water. From the outside, shipping continues exactly as before, indistinguishable from routine commercial flow. Inside the system, a decision is made. The traffic set is reclassified, not as a threat, not as a case, but as a category that no longer resolves automatically. Tracks that would normally age out remain active. Their data is retained beyond routine retention windows. What was once transient becomes persistent by instruction. Monitoring parameters change quietly. Correlation thresholds are tightened. Temporal alignment is treated as a signal rather than noise. The system begins measuring what it previously ignored. How often routes coincide without cause. How long efficiency remains suboptimal without correction. How frequently independent operators arrive at similar outcomes without shared constraint. No single shift triggers the shift. The action applies to the pattern itself. Analytic ownership is reassigned. What lived entirely inside automated logic now carries a human signature. Updates are reviewed, not because they demand response, but because they resist closure. The system does not seek intent. It seeks stability across time. Compliance is no longer sufficient to collapse uncertainty. The models are instructed to stop forcing convergence. Instead of explaining the behavior away, they are told to hold it in view. Baselines are frozen mid-adjustment, so deviation can be measured against something that no longer moves. This is the action, not intervention, not enforcement, but the choice to treat routine shipping as strategically incomplete. From this point forward, the ships do not need to do anything differently to remain relevant. The system has decided they already are. The moment passes without a marker. No alert is logged. No report circulates beyond the room. Shipping flows on, uninterrupted, indistinguishable from every other day on the water. To anyone outside the system, nothing has changed. Inside it, resolution never arrives. The reclassified traffic remains present long after its original relevance should have expired. Patterns that once would have been absorbed into historical averages are now preserved as reference points. The system stops expecting the behavior to correct itself. Baselines expand. What was previously considered coincidence is given a wider tolerance. Synchronization without coordination is no longer dismissed outright. The definition of normal absorbs a new shape, one that includes prolonged alignment without explanation. Analytic tools adapt around the change. Forecast windows shorten. Confidence bands widen by default. Models that once assumed independence now flag correlation as something to be measured, not erased. The system learns to live with ambiguity instead of rushing to resolve it. Institutional memory forms quietly. Future traffic is compared against this moment, even when no resemblance is obvious. The question is no longer whether shipping follows the rules. That is assumed. The question becomes whether rule following is enough to restore predictability. No standing orders are issued. No permanent watch is declared. Yet the monitoring posture does not fully relax. The sea looks the same. Routes remain open. Commerce continues to optimize itself in ways that still make sense, just not all at once. What changes is the system's expectation of closure. Some patterns are now allowed to persist without explanation. And once that allowance exists, it does not disappear when the traffic does. Nothing formal is written. No guidance is issued to fleets or operators. No language changes appear in public-facing rules. The system does not announce a lesson, because it does not yet claim certainty. Instead, assumptions shift. Logistics is no longer treated as a neutral backdrop. Movement that complies perfectly can still reshape the operating picture simply by persisting. Predictability is no longer inferred from legality. Order does not guarantee independence. The system adjusts the way it listens. Patterns are allowed to remain ambiguous without being forced into explanation. Correlation is no longer an error state. It is a condition that must be managed, observed, and carried forward without resolution. Compliance becomes a starting point, not an end point. The sea does not need disruption to exert pressure. It only needs repetition. Alignment, continuity that refuses to disperse. From here on, maritime security is less about stopping what breaks the rules, and more about understanding what follows them too well. The system does not say this out loud. It simply remembers. The screen holds on a wide, uneventful stretch of sea. Lanes traced faintly. Tracks steady, signals intact, everything is compliant. The silence stretches just long enough for the thought to settle. The ships never changed what they were doing. Only what the system expected them to explain.